In this video, we'll look at my favorite way of attaching two layers of fabric together anytime a pattern calls for that. And that creates a double layer of fabric with a folding edge. And in this instance, we're working on a beanie, but this can sometimes be used in a collar on a sweater too. So to start off with, I'm going to my first stitch on the needles at the beginning of the round, and I'm tracing all the way down that first column of stitches to the cast on edge, and that helps me find where I'm going to attach this edge to the live stitch on the needles. So just be careful to follow that same column of stitches all the way down, and then I like to use a locking stitch marker to mark that first stitch from the cast on edge. And in this instance, I've used a German twisted cast on or an old Norwegian cast on, so there's a nice bar that is under each stitch that we can look for. But you should be able to identify each stitch regardless of which cast on method you used. So I've marked my first stitch on the cast on edge, and now I'm going to fold my work so that cast on edge comes to the inside. And I'm going to line up that marked stitch from the cast on edge with the first live stitch on my needles. And now to attach the working stitches to that cast on edge, I'm going to go through that first stitch on my needles as if to knit, and then go through the bar that I've marked from that stitch on the cast on edge. And it doesn't really matter where you pick up that stitch from the cast on edge, but just be consistent so that it doesn't pucker. But I'm then going to pull a strand of yarn through that cast on edge and then through the working yarn, or the working stitch, on my needles. And you saw I purled the next stitch because that's what my pattern says to do, but sometimes you're going to be knitting all of these stitches. Just follow your pattern in regard to that. But now we're back to the cast on edge and we're looking for the next loop to pick up. And you can see I've used this one that I marked before, and now I need to skip one because I purled a stitch, and I'm going to grab the next bar over. So skipping one stitch from the cast on edge and pull the loop through that bar in the cast on edge, and then through the working stitch on my needle that I had previously put my right hand needle through. So start by going through the stitch on your needle, and then skip one stitch on your cast on edge and go through the next stitch, pull that yarn through, and then all the way through the stitch on your needle. Again, I'm purling in between each of these picked up stitches from the cast on edge, but your pattern might say to knit. The important thing is that I'm sharing with you that I like to do every other stitch attaching to the cast on edge, because I feel like that keeps the tension better and you don't see such a defined line in your project in the end where you've attached all your live stitches to your cast on edge. I think it keeps things a little bit looser and it just looks nicer in the end. If you want, you could do every third stitch or every fourth stitch connected to the cast on edge, whatever you're most comfortable with, but I just tend to do every other because that works out well for me. So we'll keep watching a few of these here so you can see the rhythm of this. And now going to the end, you'll see me do a few more here, but just wanted to show you that this is what it will look like as you get close to the end of your round. You'll have that nice folding edge that is going to stay put for you. It won't shift around because now we've attached these stitches to the cast on edge. And just going to take care of the last couple of these here, and then my last stitch in my pattern is a purl, and now you can see we've closed up that whole folded brim for the hat. So you've got everything connected up top, and all of my stitches line up, and that's because I was very careful to pick the right stitch on the cast on edge to attach to.